Alright, what is going on, everyone? Today we're basically gonna be reacting to Tay-K's sentence is final and say goodbye, you know what I mean? It's goodbye forever. You know what I mean? Now we all know Tay-K was originally sentenced to I think 55 years in prison if I'm not mistaken, right? But then, they that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for the feds. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? They put him right back in court for another situation, and he was found guilty for that as well. And it's just, it's over from here. I'm not gonna lie. But enough with the talking. Let's just dive into the video, see what it's talking about.
It states that we unanimously find that the defendant, Tamar McIntyre, did not cause the death of Anthony Saldivar under the immediate influence of sudden passion. Punishment to be assessed at 80 years in the prison.
Everyone thought Tay-K was done when he got 55 years in 2019. But the story didn't end there. In fact, it got even crazier. Today, we're breaking down how the viral rapper behind the race just got hit with another 80-year sentence, this time for a second murder committed while he was on the run. From house arrest to headline infamy, from SoundCloud to solitary confinement, this is the full twisted saga of Tay-K's fall, and why this time it truly is goodbye forever. Back in 2019, Tay-K, born Tamar McIntyre, was sentenced to 55 years in prison by a jury. But before that conviction, he had already made headlines for something else. While on house arrest for 8 months, the then 17-year-old stunned everyone by tweeting that he was done playing by the rules. He and his best friend cut off their ankle monitors and declared they were going on the run, daring law enforcement to come find them. That decision triggered a massive 3-month nationwide manhunt. U.S. Marshals eventually tracked Tay-K down on the other side of the country, but not before he taunted them every step of the way. He was captured on June 30th, 2017. But even then, Tay-K wasn't finished. Just hours after his arrest, a music video titled "The Race" went live on YouTube. Social media exploded. In a matter of days, the song went viral, turning him into a sensation. People couldn't look away, a teenager running from the law and rapping about it in real time. But what most of the public didn't realize was how serious his crimes really were. 2 innocent people had lost their lives. When he stood before the judge for sentencing in the murder of Ethan Walker, Tay-K quietly turned his head as the 55-year prison sentence was read aloud. He later expressed that he never had the chance to truly grow up. One of his co-defendants, a white female, received just 10 years of probation. Tay-K believed race played a role in his sentencing, stating that if he were white, he wouldn't have been punished so harshly. Tamar McIntyre, known later as Tay-K, was born on June 16, 2000, in Long Beach, California, right in the heart of Crips territory. Both of his parents were deeply involved in gang life. His father was frequently in and out of prison, while his mother remained active in the Baby Insane Crips as she tried to raise Tamar and his sister, Kayla. Things went from bad to worse in 2002 when his father was sentenced to 7 years behind bars after a drug deal went wrong. With no father figure and a mother overwhelmed by circumstances, Tamar and Kayla were eventually placed into foster care. They bounced between homes, often feeling unwanted and neglected. Tamar would later reflect on this period, saying, "Been in foster care since we were like really young. Damn near all our life. We never stayed with our parents. Holidays like Christmas came and went without celebration, leaving deep emotional gaps in their childhood. Eventually, their mother managed to leave gang life behind and moved the family to Las Vegas in hopes of a fresh start. But after just a year, in 2009, their father was released from prison. The family soon relocated again, this time to Texas. For Tamar, it wasn't a welcome change. Enrolled in elementary and then middle school, he and Kayla quickly felt the emotional weight of living with their father, who had become abusive over even the smallest things. Home was no longer a safe place. Taymor spent most nights crashing at friends' houses just to avoid going back. As the tension at home grew, so did his connection to the streets, and the streets embraced him. By 2014, Taymor was a freshman at Martin High School, though he spent little time in class. Most of his energy went into freestyling and hanging with his crew, the Daytona Boys. The group, made up of Eric Johnson, a.k.a. Santana Sage, Jalen Bell, a.k.a. Pimpies, and Taymor himself, now rapping as Tay-K 47, was loud, unruly, and constantly surrounded by smoke and music. They rapped whether they showed up for school or skipped it altogether. They weren't just friends. They were a brotherhood. With Ezra, their unofficial manager, handling logistics behind the scenes, the Daytona Boys believed they had something real, so they took a leap and began uploading their music to SoundCloud, dreaming of something bigger. Even with music offering a path forward, Tay-K struggled to stay out of trouble. An old tweet once revealed a letter showing he'd been expelled from high school, caught bringing marijuana onto campus. With school no longer an option and home life falling apart, he felt like nothing really mattered. At just 15 years old, Tay-K was essentially on his own. He started sleeping over at his friend Pimpy's house more often, and their bond deepened after his expulsion. From that point on, all his focus went into music and social media, pushing the Daytona Boys' name wherever he could. He and his crew even began making early interview appearances, introducing themselves to the world as Tay-K 47 from Daytona Boys Pimpies, backed by their manager who helped organize everything. The buzz was building, and so were their ambitions. They began booking local shows, performing well into the early hours of the morning. But once the music stopped, the street life resumed. By 2 a.m., they were back in the shadows, doing what they believed they had to do to survive, robbing, stealing, and carrying guns. Anyone who stood in their way paid the price. Then came the night that would change everything. In the early hours of January 1st, 2016, the Daytona Boys had just finished performing at a New Year's Eve show in Arlington. Santana Sage, the only one with a car, drove Tay-K and Pimpies through the city. They pulled up to a red light, and another vehicle pulled up beside them. What happened next remains murky, but what's confirmed is chilling. Santana Sage pulled a gun and fired into the other car, killing 21-year-old college student Sarah Muchlechner. They drove off into the night, leaving chaos in their wake. Police later tracked Santana down using a trail of Twitter posts that placed him at the party earlier that evening. In court, his defense was that the Daytona Boys had been provoked, allegedly targeted with racial slurs by people in the other car. He claimed he only meant to scare them with the gunshots, but none of that could change the outcome. A young woman lost her life for no reason, and her grieving parents were left with questions that may never be answered. Tay-K and Pimpies, both minors at the time of the New Year's Eve shooting, managed to avoid any legal consequences. Their names weren't even mentioned in court. Walking away from such a serious situation without repercussions gave them a dangerous sense of invincibility. Meanwhile, the consequences did catch up to Santana Sage. After a 6-month trial, it took the jury only 3 hours to find him guilty of murder. The verdict was clear. We, the jury, find the defendant, Eric Jamal Johnson, guilty of the offense of murder. He was sentenced to 44 years in prison. At just 15 years old, Tay-K was still a kid with no stable home, no income, and no legal way to support himself. Survival became his priority, and it wasn't long before desperation turned into another dangerous decision. On July 26, 2016, Tay-K, Pimpies, and 5 others, including Shaw Robinson, Letharian Merritt, Ariana Barrett, Megan Holt, and a minor named Mia, came up with a plan. The target was Mia's boyfriend, 17-year-old Zachary Belote. The group intended to rob him at his home in Mansfield, Texas. Zachary lived with his roommate, Ethan Walker, in a house on the 1500 block. Earlier that day, the group met at an apartment to go over the plan. Weapons were distributed. Pimpis grabbed brass knuckles, and 2 others were armed with guns. Tay-K later claimed he was unarmed and told the others to watch his back if anything went wrong. Around 5 p.m., Mia and her 2 friends, Ariana and Megan, arrived at the house under the guise of just wanting to smoke and chill. Zachary had no idea what was really going on. Just down the street, Tay-K, Pimpis, Sean, and Letharian waited in a car, anticipating the signal. But the plan immediately ran into problems. The girls found more people in the house than expected, forcing them to stall for hours. As the night dragged on and 10 p.m. approached, nerves frayed. Eventually, they decided to move forward. When no one was paying attention, the girls unlocked the door. 4 men stormed into the house, 2 wielding guns. Sean held Zachary at gunpoint. Letharian aimed at Ethan. Tay-K and Pimpis ransacked the house, looking for anything valuable, but they came up short. The payout they'd counted on simply wasn't there. Then everything unraveled in an instant. Letharian, caught in the chaos, panicked. Without fully realizing what he was doing, he pulled the trigger, shooting Ethan Walker in the stomach and killing him. At the same time, Sean fired at Zachary Belote, hitting him in the shoulder. Zachary survived. Ethan didn't. The group knew immediately. They had gone too far. What was supposed to be a robbery had turned into something far worse. Now, it was only a matter of time before the law caught up with them. In a now widely circulated interrogation video, Tay-K is seen breaking down in tears as detectives questioned him about his role in the home invasion. He eventually confessed to taking part in the robbery, but maintained he never carried a gun and never expected anyone to die. He had just turned 16 when he was arrested and placed in juvenile detention. For 2 weeks, he waited for someone to come get him. That someone turned out to be his sister, Kayla, who had just turned 18 and gotten her own apartment after months of saving. "I had my own apartment," she recalled. "We didn't have a big family or support system, so when the time came, I stepped up and became his guardian." Tay-K was released by a juvenile court judge on the condition that he wear a GPS ankle monitor under constant surveillance. Pimpis, his close friend and co-defendant, was also placed on house arrest. The 2 remained in contact daily, often talking online and figuring out their next move. Police kept a close watch on Kayla's apartment, monitoring everyone who came and went. Anyone leaving the building was quickly pulled over. Inside, Tay-K remained mostly in his room, glued to the internet. He was constantly online, tweeting to friends to come by and help him record music while he served out house arrest. At the time, he only released a handful of songs on SoundCloud, saving the rest for what he believed would be something bigger. The world hadn't yet caught on to who Tay-K was, but he saw an opportunity where no one else did. From July 2016 to March 2017, nearly 8 months, he stayed locked in, both physically and mentally, thinking about his next move. The stress was mounting. At just 16 years old, he faced the very real possibility of being tried as an adult for a murder charge. With no lawyer, no money, and no clear path ahead, he felt cornered. Then he made a bold decision. Late on the night of March 26, 2017, Tay-K posted a tweet that would soon become infamous. He declared he was done with house arrest. Social media exploded. The tweet went viral, and it was clear Tay-K was no longer just trying to avoid jail. He was turning it into a spectacle. He called up Pimpis, and together they hatched a plan. They cut off their ankle monitors and announced, whether through actions or attitude, that if the police wanted them, they'd have to play a game of hide and seek. Their first stop was San Antonio, about 3 hours away, where they managed to lay low for a few weeks. But Tay-K made no effort to keep a low profile. Fans spotted him out in public, at malls, restaurants, even ordering food. While there, Pimpis had been in touch with a local photographer named Mark Salvador. They'd planned to meet for a photo shoot, but Tay-K and Pimpis had another agenda. They needed money, and Mark was their target. They arranged to meet around 5 p.m. in a quiet parking garage. When Mark arrived, he got into the car to hang out and smoke. That's when things took a dark turn. Tay-K and Pimpies robbed him, took his camera gear, and threw him out of the vehicle. But Mark didn't go quietly. He ran after them, yelling for help, and jumped onto the hood of the moving car. In an effort to shake him off, they sped into a nearby Chick-fil-A parking lot. When the car stopped, Mark stood up and stomped on the windshield, cracking it. Enraged, Tay-K allegedly leaned out of the window and shot him, sending Mark flying off the hood and onto the pavement. He was left there to die. What Tay-K didn't realize was that the entire event had been caught on a nearby surveillance camera. Now, only one thing mattered to Tay-K and Pimpies. They had the camera gear and just enough cash to make their next move. But before heading out, they made a risky decision. They stopped back home in Arlington. By then, police had already connected the dots, linking both Tay-K and Pimpies to the murder of photographer Mark Salvador in the Chick-fil-A parking lot. Realizing time was running out, they quickly mapped out a 23-hour drive to New Jersey, where they had contacts and a place to stay. Every dollar they had left went toward getting there. Tay-K, ever focused on his music, had something else in mind too. He knew someone in Jersey willing to shoot a music video for free. As law enforcement ramped up their search, distributing wanted posters and chasing down tips, Tay-K saw it as something else entirely, a golden marketing opportunity. That's when he turned his own escape into art. He wrote and recorded a new track titled The Race, mocking the manhunt and making light of the fact that his face was plastered across town. To build the drama even more, he planned to drop it on his birthday. The audio version appeared first on SoundCloud and Twitter, but Tay-K wanted more. The very next day, with the help of a local cameraman, he filmed the video. It only took a day to edit, and once Tay-K gave the signal, everything was ready. While hiding out in New Jersey, Tay-K and Pimpies continued to evade law enforcement, but the clock was ticking. U.S. Marshals had closed in. It was no longer a matter of if, but when. Exactly 2 weeks after Tay-K's birthday, the manhunt ended. On June 30th, 2017, both he and Pimpies were arrested at a home in New Jersey, ending a 96-day national search. But Tay-K wasn't done. Just 2 hours after his arrest, the music video for The Race dropped on YouTube. It was the final twist in an already surreal saga. A teenage fugitive who filmed a music video while running from the U.S. Marshals. The internet exploded. The video spread like wildfire, quickly racking up hundreds of thousands of views a day. Remixes started popping up, big-name rappers co-signed the track, and the hashtag number #FreeTayK began trending across social media. But beneath the viral fame was a much darker truth. Tay-K was facing multiple murder charges, and law enforcement had no intention of letting his rising popularity influence justice. Texas made its position clear. Just 1 month later, despite being only 17, a judge ruled that Tay-K would be tried as an adult. Outside the courtroom, Tay-K's music was taking on a life of its own. His breakout track, The Race, had already racked up nearly 20 million views, and major record labels were starting to take serious notice. Even with multiple murder charges hanging over him, Tay-K managed to sign a record deal. His previously recorded material was packaged into a mixtape titled Santana World, with The Race as the centerpiece. The project turned out to be a commercial success. Over the next 6 months, The Race would soar past 100 million views and even get a high-profile remix featuring 21 Savage and Young Nudy. Tay-K suddenly found himself in an unusual position. One of the few artists in history to have a viral hit he'd never get the chance to perform live. Despite the growing legal heat, Tay-K remained optimistic. In his mind, jail was just a pit stop. He believed he'd beat the charges and walk away free. But in early 2018, reality started to close in. The courts began handing out sentences related to the 2016 home invasion, and the murder of Ethan Walker. Megan Holt was the first to be sentenced, 20 years in February. The court considered her the mastermind behind the entire robbery plot. Mia, who was Zachary Belot's girlfriend and had cooperated with police, received just 10 years of probation. As each sentence came down, the circle around Tay-K tightened. He'd already been denied bond, and the judge made it clear that public support wasn't going to sway the court. "It's my understanding that people throughout this country have free Tay-K signs up," the judge said. "This court has a problem with that." Shortly after, Letharian Merritt, named as the one who pulled the trigger on Ethan Walker, was sentenced to 40 years. In June, Tay-K was hit with another legal blow. The family of Mark Saldivar, the photographer killed outside a Chick-fil-A, filed a $1 million wrongful death lawsuit. A month later, the families of Ethan Walker and Zachary Belot also filed their own civil suits, seeking an additional $1 million from any profits generated by the race. Amid all this, Tay-K gave a jailhouse interview to Adam 22 of No Jumper. In a 10-minute phone call, Tay-K seemed confident. "Next be there, I'ma be," he said, suggesting he still believed he'd see the outside world again soon. But during the call, Tay-K made a critical mistake. He casually mentioned having an iPad in his cell. "I got a tablet, like I got an iPad. I be listening to music," he said. Just days later, jail authorities conducted a surprise shakedown and confiscated the device. Tay-K was thrown into solitary confinement and faced additional disciplinary action. Adam 22 later said he regretted not editing that part out of the interview. "The management didn't ask me to remove it," he explained, "and then he gets put in solitary for having an iPad and using it in jail." By August, Tay-K was transferred to the Lon Evans Correction Center, a maximum security facility, where he was placed in solitary for 23 hours a day. Still, he tried to maintain a sense of defiant optimism. He even tweeted a picture from inside with the caption, "Live from the gates of hell in the purple spiral. She say she ain't heard from Tay-K in a while." As the case for Ethan Walker neared its conclusion, more sentences followed. Ariana Barrett, who had testified against her co-defendants, received 25 years for aggravated robbery. A week after Ariana Barrett's sentencing, Sean Robinson was handed 40 years for his role in the murder of Ethan Walker. That left just 2 defendants awaiting their fate, Pimpez and Tay-K, both now facing an additional murder charge for the killing of Mark Saldivar. Prosecutors offered Pimpez a deal, testify against Tay-K in exchange for leniency, but he refused. Despite everything, he wouldn't turn on his closest friend. Their bond, forged long before the trials, remained unshaken, but loyalty came at a cost. In November 2018, Pimpez pled guilty to 2 counts of aggravated robbery for his involvement in the deadly events that claimed the lives of both Ethan Walker and Mark Saldivar. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Just like that, Tay-K lost his last real ally. Now, all eyes were on Tay-K. He was the final man standing. The world was waiting to see what would happen to the young rapper who had once taunted law enforcement through music. But no one awaited the verdict more than Tay-K himself. In July 2019, his trial finally began. After 3 years of investigations, witness testimonies, and mounting evidence, the courtroom was ready to deliver its judgment. Tay-K admitted guilt on the charge of aggravated robbery, but maintained he was not responsible for murder. His defense leaned on his age, insisting that he was only 16 at the time and played the least significant role in the crime. But the jury wasn't swayed. Lyrics from the race were brought into the courtroom and used as evidence. Prosecutors argued that Tay-K glorified violence, showed no remorse, and thrived off the chaos he caused. His music, they claimed, wasn't just art, it was a confession. The trial lasted just 1 week. By Friday, the jury had reached a unanimous decision: guilty. Tay-K was convicted for the murder of Ethan Walker, and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Still, he didn't think it was the end of the road. In 2021, he went live on Instagram, drawing in over 40,000 viewers. He told fans that he'd been writing music behind bars and was working on coming home to release it. There was even talk of an appeal bond. But things didn't go the way he hoped. Before his second murder trial for the killing of Mark Saldivar even began, Tay-K was dealing with chaos inside prison. In 2019, reports surfaced that he had attempted to start his own gang behind bars, called the Rugrats, aiming to go to war with the established Hispanic prison gang P Tango Blast. The warden caught wind of the plan and immediately placed Tay-K in solitary confinement. Soon after, media outlets got hold of a bizarre document titled The Laws of Power, a rule book the Rugrats were allegedly going to follow. Around the same time, rumors spread that Tay-K had stabbed a prison guard, though that claim was never confirmed. Then, in February 2023, Tay-K tweeted that someone on his cell block had murdered their cellmate with a food tray and stood on his head afterward. Even years into his sentence, Tay-K maintained a loyal following, but the reality was sinking in. With no movement on an appeal, and the second trial looming, it was becoming clear that early release on the Ethan Walker case was off the table. Fans were holding out hope that Tay-K could beat the charges in the Saldivar case and maybe, just maybe, get a chance at parole someday. But instead, the opposite happened. During the trial for Mark Saldivar's murder, a key witness stepped forward, Tay-K's own girlfriend, Joanna Reyes. She took the stand and told the court everything. According to her testimony, Tay-K had asked her to help him find a photographer. She had come across Mark Saldivar's work on Instagram and reached out to arrange a meeting. Joanna drove Tay-K and one of his friends to meet Saldivar. But when he showed up, Saldivar said he had a scheduling conflict and asked if they could reschedule the shoot. Everyone seemed fine with it, and he asked for a ride to the mall. Joanna agreed, but that's when everything went wrong. According to Joanna Reyes, things escalated quickly the moment Mark Saldivar asked to be dropped off at the mall. That's when Tay-K pulled out a gun and demanded Saldivar hand over his camera bag. When Saldivar refused, Tay-K and his friend Jalen Bell began beating him. In a desperate attempt to escape, Saldivar climbed onto the hood of the car. Joanna testified that Tay-K told her to get Saldivar off the vehicle, but she couldn't do anything to stop what was happening. That's when Tay-K opened the car door and pulled the trigger, shooting Saldivar. As they drove off, Joanna recalled Jalen giving Tay-K a high five, telling him, "You caught your first body." Joanna later agreed to testify against Tay-K in exchange for a plea deal that gave her 10 years of probation. She explained to the court that the only reason she didn't go to the police immediately was because Tay-K had threatened to kill her and her family. Her testimony proved to be a crucial part of the case, ultimately helping to secure Tay-K's 80-year sentence. But Tay-K's defense team didn't help matters. While Joanna was on the stand, the judge explicitly warned the defense not to bring up any negative details about Saldivar unless they first cleared it with the court and prosecution. According to reports, there were questionable items in Saldivar's bag that the defense thought could cast doubt on his character. Ignoring the court's directive, Tay-K's lawyers brought it up anyway by asking Joanna about it. The judge immediately cleared the courtroom, reprimanded the defense, and instructed the jury to disregard what they had just heard. Meanwhile, Tay-K's older sister, Kayla Beverly, took the stand to defend her brother. She recounted the traumatic childhood they shared, telling the jury how both she and Tay-K were placed in foster care. She was just 7, and he was only 5. According to Tay-K's sister, Kayla, life growing up was far from normal. After bouncing through the foster care system, they eventually ended up living with their father. But what should have been a fresh start turned into something even worse. Kayla recalled how their father used to beat them with wooden objects, and how he once tied Tay-K to an ironing board and strapped him down. "Tamor was younger than me, and he would cry, she told the court. Maybe they thought he was being overdramatic so they'd strap him to the board. Stuff like that. Kayla gave her testimony after Tay-K had already been found guilty, hoping it would help reduce his sentence. His lawyer believed her account of their traumatic childhood could sway the court. But the judge, while acknowledging Tay-K had suffered through a rough life, made it clear. He was still responsible for the choices he made. Kayla insisted that everything started because they had to run away from home. That's why all this happened, she said. It wasn't even good when we moved in with our dad. I'm not saying he was a terrible father, but there was real abuse going on in our home. We had to leave. Ahead of the trial for Mark Saldivar's murder, Tay-K's legal team worried that his track, The Race, might once again be used against him, just as it had been in the Ethan Walker case. The lyrics, the music video, the image of a teenager rapping about life on the run, it had already shaped public perception. His attorneys didn't want jurors who were already familiar with the viral hit. While Tay-K had some buzz before the track dropped, The Race made him infamous. He'd killed someone, gone on the run, and then turned the story into a song, and it exploded. Lil Yachty even remixed it, helping push it further into the mainstream. In 2023, Yachty posted a letter from Tay-K, written from behind bars. Tay-K still has some supporters in the industry, but many believe his moment would have passed even if he hadn't been convicted of 2 murders. His first and only record dropped after he was arrested for Ethan Walker's death, and no one really knows what his ceiling might have been. Back then, some compared him to rising stars like YB and YBN Namir, but even Namir eventually faded, and he wasn't fighting 2 murder charges. For a while, fans hoped Tay-K would get parole in the Ethan Walker case and somehow return to music. But that hope is now all but gone. While he avoided a capital murder conviction in the Saldivar case, which would have meant life without parole, he still received 80 more years. Even in the best-case scenario, Tay-K will be behind bars for decades before anyone considers letting him out.
But yeah, that seems to be the end of the video. Let me know what y'all thought about this whole situation, man. This is absolutely crazy, man. To be honest, either way, Tay-K's life was already over, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't say completely over still, because when he was locked up, he was only like, what, 16, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, by the time, like, 55 years, I mean, he'll be old, but he still have time to live, you know what I mean? But, like, now, it's like he has life in prison. Like, he's gonna spend the rest of his life in jail for sure, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure they added, like, 80 years to his sentence, if I'm not wrong, which is absolutely diabolical, you know what I mean? Crazy, bro. So, as he was facing the 55 years, I guess, you know, they were still doing their investigation about something else about him, you know, just to keep him locked up in prison. The feds weren't satisfied with the 55, you know what I mean? They're trying to keep him in there forever. And let's just say that was a success, you know what I mean? So that's absolutely insane, bro. But let me know what y'all think, man, because it's not looking good at all for Tay-K. And, you know, Donald Trump is, you know, pardoning people, you know. There's a, let's just say Tay-K's, you know, Tay-K still has like a fan base, I should say, and you know they're you know trying to get Trump or something like that to pardon him, but I think it's over for Tay-K. I'm not gonna lie, bro. I think it's definitely over for Tay-K. You know, he's just not getting out, bro. You know what I mean? He's just not getting out. He made a very dumb decision when he was young, when he was 16. But it's fair enough to say if he didn't make that decision, he definitely wouldn't have blown up as much as he did, you know what I mean? Because that whole situation is what, you know, basically blew him up in the first place. Not only the song, but also the backstory behind it, bro, is absolutely crazy. Running away from the police, like, like, The Race was probably one of the biggest songs back in, like, what, 2016, 2017? I don't even know. It's been so long that I forgot, bro. But, you know, Tay-K is getting old on us, man. And it's time to just let it go. And, accept his fate. It's over, bro. You know what I mean? It's over. So, yeah, man. Without further ado, though, let me know what y'all think. And without further ado, just gonna end the video here. Let me know what y'all think. And also, do y'all think he's getting like attacked in prison? Because there's like I'm pretty sure there's like a stab mark on his neck or something like that. Let me know what y'all think, man. Do y'all think he's catching fades in jail? Let me know, man. But without further ado, peace out.